Good day. So the question is, what are some natural home remedies for yeast infections? Dr. Peterman, what do you think about that?
I think that there are a lot of people who have yeast in their system, and they're just unaware of how in the world they got it. A lot of people who are obese have a yeast infection, and that's why they're obese. Because when yeast gets into your system, it can actually take over the sensors in your stomach, and you can eat, and then 15 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour later, this material will trigger the "gosh, I'm hungry" routine, and you're not hungry, but it tells your body that you are hungry, so you go and eat some more, and most of the time what you crave is carbs. So you'll eat maybe a pie or half a pie or something like this, and for obese people it's very detrimental. Most obese people have some form of yeast infection, especially women. It's very common there. So where would somebody get a yeast infection? Most yeast infections are derived from the gut and from some kind of compromise of the gut lining and the blood barrier. So you have diverticulitis, which is one case. You have maybe what is called perforated bowel, and that doesn't mean it's spilling out into the inside of your body. It means it's spilling out. There's a kind of a filtration system between your bowel and your bloodstream. That is where the food kind of goes through the wall and then goes into the bloodstream. But what can happen is once that opens up a little bit, the normal amounts of yeast and bacteria that are there can actually get into the bloodstream, and yeast is more aggressive than bacteria, fungal situation. So that can spread out through the body, and then it hijacks the sensors for wanting to be hungry or whatever. And it can cause a lot of other detrimental problems. To get rid of this, I would say one of the most important things that you could possibly do is start to use good probiotics. I'll tell you something else that's really good. Before you do that, if you know you have a yeast infection, the first thing you ought to do, in my opinion, if I had it, I'll have to say it as a naturopath, if I had a yeast infection, I would take somewhere between 600 and 1,200 milligrams of resveratrol every day, pure resveratrol every day. I would take more resveratrol than is listed on the label, because they'll say, oh yeah, it has resveratrol in it. It may be 200 milligrams. That's not going to do it. You need to up the game big time, because resveratrol kills yeast, and it really does a number on that. Kills fungus and various other materials. So by increasing your resveratrol, you're going to run that through the blood system, and the yeast is going to be expelled. So that would be the number one thing that I would do. Then I would start in on the 100 billion units of good probiotics, because you want to have the bacteria doing battle with the yeast, and you want the best bacteria you can for your gut. And the bacteria will help heal the gut. Now, you don't want to keep feeding this monster, this yeast monster. So stop eating stuff that feeds yeast, and that is any kind of cereal grains or donuts or bread or anything like that that feeds yeast. You really shouldn't eat. Even a big fat white potato is converted to sugar, and sugar is the best friend of yeast. I mean, if you don't believe it, how do you think we make beer? I mean, yeast is in beer, and beer is, you develop alcohol by feeding the yeast sugar. So this is something that you want to avoid. Start looking at a paleo diet. if you want to eliminate a yeast infection, do the first two things that are recommended, and then start looking at a paleo diet, something that uses less carbs and a lot more quality proteins. I use a particular bread, and I'll give a plug for the company. It's called Udi bread. I love it. It's frozen, and I can make my own. It's bread made from the combination of
tapioca starch, right?
well, yeah, you have some of that. Then you also have cassava flour, and you have coconut flour and almond flour, and those things all mixed together, and they can pretty well fake it as far as making you think you're actually having a piece of bread, and it tastes really good. I like to toast it up and put a little butter on it, and that's absolutely fantastic, but it doesn't bring in any of the carbs that would be a problem for any yeast in the body. So
I had a question for you about
absolutely.
the resveratrol. You're saying it's a good thing to take to combat the yeast infection.
Yes.
Does that work by strengthening the mitochondria within the cell to defeat that, or how does that work?
No, it fights it as the grapes would fight it. The surface of the skin of red or purple grapes, I have a lot of resveratrol in those skins, and nature uses the resveratrol to fight off fungus and various kinds of other infections, mostly not bacteria, but mostly fungal and viral infections. So the grapes tend to be able to get past it. It works just like that in human beings as well. Now people say, well, where did we find out about resveratrol? It was traced down originally from the idea of Mediterranean diet, because people who were drinking red wine and eating a Mediterranean diet tended to have a lot less heart disease or fungal infection or anything else. And we found that resveratrol was really, really at the center of that. But in order to take 600 to 1,200 milligrams and fight a yeast infection, you'd be looking in excess of 4,000 gallons of wine a day.
Good Lord.
Yeah, a little problem there. But the idea is that you want to just really fight hard against the yeast, because the yeast doesn't want to give up. You may find that you have recurring toenail infections or fingernail infections from yeast, bladder infections, uterine infections. If you're a female, this stuff is aggressive. So you need to fight hard, fight back. And that's what I would do. I think for the first 3 or 4 days, I might even take some about 2 to 3 ounces of resveratrol, 2 or 3 ounces of colloidal silver, 20 parts per million of colloidal silver, and do that for about 3 or 4 days, and then follow it up with resveratrol. Now, after the end of all this, you would then want to, in about the 7th to the 10th day, you would want to start the 80 to 100 billion units of material probiotic for your restoration of your gut. And I would stay on that for a long time, because you can't overdo it. This is really fantastic material. And I would also start to drink things like kombucha, which has live material in it that helps fight any kind of infections. So until next time, that's basically it. We know we can have some success with that, because I've seen it in my clinic. You have anything else to add to that?
Sounds pretty straightforward.
Okay. Until next time, this is Jerry.
And David.
Well, we bring these videos to you every single day. And keep letting us know what you think. We'd love to hear from you. We have literally thousands of comments that are telling us what you're interested in. And that is so exciting. And we're going to address as many of those as we can in short videos, so that you have some place to go to to look this up and get some common sense natural remedies. So until next time, be well.
Be well.